couple of green Grangers. I guess it's moving on towards the second half of our summit. It's been fantastic. We've made a lot of progress, and we're really excited about all the great things that we've done so far. And this is a really great presentation that's definitely going to inspire everybody. I'd like to introduce Zach Baker, and I think I'm going to let him do all the talking, right? Because, yeah.
Well, thank you all for having me, and Jeannie and Glenn, thanks for inviting me here. So my name is Zach Baker, and I'm a second-year law student over here at the University of Oregon, and I'm very interested in environmental law. And before law school, I spent 4 years in Washington, D.C., 2 of those years lobbying on the 2008 Farm Bill, which I know you all are very familiar with at this point. So I was very thrilled to hear that folks were coming together to talk about the Farm Bill, because it is a really, really important piece of legislation. So I heard that there was some good progress earlier today, and I'm very happy to hear that. Just to round out what I've been up to before law school, after lobbying on the 2008 Farm Bill, I worked at the National Wildlife Federation on climate change policy, and then spent 1.5 years going inside the Department of Agriculture, where I worked in their Office of Budget and Program Analysis, helping implement some of the regulations that were coming out of the 2008 Farm Bill that we helped lobby on earlier. So now I'm here at law school, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what I do outside of law school, which is participating in an organization called the Benton County Community Rights Coalition. And to give you a sense of that organization, I'm going to give you a walkthrough of kind of how the organization came together, what the organization is doing, some of the challenges and barriers that we've hit, and some of the successes that we feel like we've hit. And the reason I think Glenn and Jeannie asked me to speak about this work is that it's a very different tact at trying to push forward sustainable agriculture, local agriculture, organic agriculture, many forms of agriculture that I know you all are very invested in and interested in. So that's some of the background that I wanted to give you. So just to start off, Oregon's Willamette Valley has had a very strong sustainable agriculture movement for many years. And actually, you all might know that Oregon Tilth is an organization here in Oregon, and they started the certification standards that we all now know as the National Organic Standards and the USDA organic label that has come from that. But so there's this very strong history of good advocacy and support for local and sustainable agriculture. But at the same time, the valley here is under threat from industrial agriculture and the march of genetically modified organisms into the valley, which has caused a lot of concern for farmers here, community members, and students and folks, advocates such as myself. So the way the Benton County Community Rights Coalition got started was that a number of farmers in Benton County, which is up in Corvallis, about 40 miles north of here, they came together at a workshop where folks were talking about pushing forward sustainable agriculture in a different way, and that's through the community rights movement. And these farmers spent the next 7 or so months after that workshop coming together and writing an ordinance, kind of what you guys are doing earlier today, writing a resolution, but an ordinance that they would then submit to the county to try and ban the planting of genetically modified organisms in the county. So that's where the organization started to come together, and they ended up with the ordinance. But I want to kind of step back, because really what's important about understanding what the coalition is doing is the theory behind what the coalition is doing. So, as I mentioned, genetically modified organisms were something that brought the farmers together to start thinking about working on sustainable agriculture in a different way, because unfortunately the farmers in Benton County have seen a march of GMOs come through over the years, and they started to get frustrated that they felt like they couldn't stop it. So there were three main reasons why the farmers came together. One was to protect the economic livelihood of their farms and their products, to protect the environment, and then finally to protect human health. And I need to talk a little bit about GMOs. I know you all are probably familiar with some of the ramifications of using GMOs, but it's important in telling the story of the coalition and the thinking that got people thinking differently about how to go about making change in sustainable agriculture. So I mentioned the farmers wanted to talk about protecting their livelihoods. GMOs threaten the contamination of seeds, and it's not just the farmers on organic farms that have to worry about the contamination of seeds. It's also conventional farmers who are trying to sell their products, in some cases here, abroad, and from this valley, which is a very, very important seed growing place. The GMOs also promote corporate control of the food system and patenting the seeds. And the farmers in Benton County felt like they really wanted to be able to have a say in their seeds, grow their seeds, save their seeds, do what they wanted with their seeds. So they also had a very strong ethic to protect the environment. And GMOs, they adversely affect the genetic diversity of seeds through genetic drift, through control of the seeds, so the farmers can't actually use them to breed new crops in some cases because they can't get access to a lot of the genetic material that they needed. We've seen the rise of superweeds in largely the Midwest, but it's starting to spread more where a lot of GMO planting has happened, which the superweeds then lead to more pesticide use because you have to try and kill that superweed, and that pesticide use then goes into the water and causes all sorts of environmental problems for both the environment and then human health. And there's also recently been some research about the human health effects of actually eating GMOs, and you may have heard about the study out of France. There was a big picture of a rat with a lot of different tumors. There was concern that the rats had been fed GMOs and that the GMOs then led to cancerous tumor growth. And so there are starting to be studies out there that are calling into question the wiseness of us eating GMOs. So again, economic livelihood, the environment, human health, the farmers in the Benton County Community Rights Coalition came together, and those are the fundamental core values and interests that they really wanted to work on. So then the question becomes, okay, so we know at least the farmers and myself and a couple other folks in the coalition felt like we wanted to do something about GMOs, but this is where the method becomes really important, because they've been fighting GMOs for years and years. In the valley here, they have had sugar beets come through. There's talk about GMO wheat coming through. There is an issue about canola being here. So the farmers have been through the fights and the battles, bringing their tractors to Salem and the like, and they just felt like they were fighting one crop at a time, one by one, and the process, they're still in the same boat every time. They just have to go and fight one crop at a time, and they're not feeling like they're making a systemic change. And so I know there was some talk last night about Prop 37 and GMO labeling. And for folks in California, I'm sure you're aware, I know you're aware that it kind of started in Oregon back in 2002. There was an effort to label GMOs, and we're still fighting the same battle, right? And so it's frustrating for folks who have been in the movement for so long, fighting the same battle for so long. So then the farmers also realized that the government wasn't protecting the farms and the people to the extent that it could. And for example, the regulatory system is permitting harm, it's not stopping harm. So an example of that is factory farms, which the way to deal with factory farms, the way the government has set out the advocacy around them is around nutrient management, which is the crap that's coming out of the farm. And you have to battle over how much crap comes out of the farm instead of stopping the farm in general. There are other reasons that communities don't want factory farms in their communities. And so as an advocate, your only channel is, I'm just going to fight over whether 10,000 pounds of crap comes out of the farm or 5,000 pounds. But I'm not going to be able to fight over whether this farm is actually going to be in my community or not. And the other part of that is that the regulatory system, in no small terms, is basically putting corporations over people. And a great example of that here in Oregon is the fight over canola. So a number of years ago, there was a big fight about where canola could be planted, and there was finally an agreement about a certain area where canola could be planted, and everyone thought it was over because we thought, there was this agreement between government, consumers, farmers, that this is where the boundaries were going to be. But now, in the last year or two, there's been an effort to expand those boundaries. And same battle over again. People have to ramp up the advocacy and the work. And even with all the advocacy that the farmers did this time around, the Oregon Department of Agriculture decided to expand the boundary of allowing more planting of canola in more areas. So the fact that the farmers and advocates in the communities are going to the Oregon Department of Agriculture and saying we don't want this, and then the Oregon Department of Agriculture is just going ahead without it, without listening, is just one example of how people are just losing their voice in the regulatory battle. And then the other frustrating part is that even if we can be successful in trying to get a state or the Oregon Department of Agriculture to listen to us, and we can pass a ban on planting of GMOs, or we can pass GMO labeling, those types of efforts end up being open to legal challenge. So I know in the Prop 37 battle, there were probably threats of lawsuits. Here we have a GMO labeling bill that the State House is considering here. And just yesterday, an attorney said that if the GMO labeling bill came to fruition, they would challenge it on the fact that it's unconstitutional because it's forcing corporations to speak, which is against their right of free speech. And and they were also talking about the fact of preemption, that on the federal level there is no labeling law, so why should the state have a labeling law? And they would try and challenge it on that basis. So there are a number of legal doctrines, and this is where I feel like sometimes my legal education efforts pay off. But just to give you a sense, so you've got the preemption issue, which is federal preempts a state legislative action, or a state can preempt a local action if it's in conflict with the federal or state level. You also have Dillon's rule, and Dillon's rule is kind of this funny thing where a judge in Iowa years and years ago basically said that he looked at the local governments as children and the state governments as parents. Mm-hmm. And so anyone who has kids, the parents tell the local government what they can and can't do, and the local government doesn't have any sovereignty to be able to do what it wants and for the people in that local community to make decisions. There's also the interstate commerce clause, which is another way that this lawyer that was speaking in the news was talking about challenging the GMO labeling bill, that he was specifically talking about frankenfish or GMO salmon, at least in Oregon, is a very important issue here. And the issue is that he felt under the interstate commerce clause that if you are interfering with the fish industry nationally by saying that you have to label salmon here, that's against the interstate commerce clause. The interstate commerce clause says basically that states can't mess with federal commerce. That's the general gist of it. So that's another barrier that they've got there. And then the corporate rights that I mentioned. So there are free speech rights for corporations, there are due process rights for corporations. And so
well, there shouldn't be.
Yes, and that's exactly what we said. There shouldn't be, and that's what we're working on. So we saw all of these different clamps that are trying to stop you from taking action as a local community, and said, this is not fair, this is not what we believe is right, and we're going to try and do something about it. And that's where the Food Bill of Rights that I'm going to actually pass out and walk you through a little bit is where we ended up. We realized that the system's not working for us, and we needed to think differently about how to advocate. And so we came up with this idea of doing a Food Bill of Rights through with the help of the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. And so let me just pass these around. Y'all can take one there. I think there are 10 or so copies, so should be able to find them. So while that's going around, this Food Bill of Rights ordinance is just one of many ordinances that about 150 communities throughout the country have worked on. And they have ranged from factory farm issues to fracking to climate change. And it's basically communities coming together to try and assert their right to self-government and turn down or stop all of the clamps that I was talking about, the interstate commerce clause and the like. So I see people diving into it already. So there, I'm going to point out a couple of places in there that I want you all to look at. But the general structure of it is the ordinance is built on asserting the community rights, and then it prohibits activities that would violate those rights. And then it removes those legal doctrines that I was talking about that threaten to override those rights. So basically it says you can't use those legal doctrines against the community when they are trying to assert their right to stop GMOs or stop fracking or stop factory farms.
Oh, this is big.
It is big. It is big.
It really is.
So if you all can turn to the first page, if someone would be willing, if folks are willing to read a couple paragraphs for me, that would be awesome. So if you could read the first paragraph, that would be great. Yeah.
Whereas the sustainable food system within Benton County is essential to the well-being of the county's residents, natural communities, living soils, and ecosystems, as well as the health and flourishing of the local economy, of which agriculture plays a vital role.
Great, thanks. So that just sets the context of what the farmers and advocates in Benton County feel about agriculture. And it goes on with a number of more whereas clauses, but I think you get a sense that we're really trying to assert sustainable agriculture as the common denominator
You're really
in
creating
Benton County.
A set of rights for an ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah,
Like the
so that's,
ecosystem has rights.
yeah, yeah.
Good.
So if you can turn the page, and then if someone could take that first paragraph, that would be great.
Whereas the people of Benton County understand that meaningful lawmaking which curtails the authority of agribusiness corporations to engage in unsustainable farming practices, such as obtaining patents on genetically engineered living processes and organisms like seeds, may run afoul of claimed corporate rights or powers, and the people understand further that those rights and powers are routinely used to usurp the rights of people, their communities, natural systems, and ecosystems, and thus prevent people from addressing local concerns such as sustainable food systems and seed heritage.
Okay, that's good.
Good?
Thank you.
Wow.
So, that's what we were talking about just before, are all those legal doctrines. We're saying we understand those legal doctrines and we want to change them and don't think they should apply to what we're trying to do. So then, if someone wants to take the findings and intent section, that would be great. Where I can do it.
The people of Benton County declare that we possess the right to community self-government and that our right to local self-governance is a fundamental and inalienable right. We assert that the right to adopt this ordinance, which creates a food bill of rights for the people of the county and which protects seed heritage. We find that corporate involvement in agriculture interferes with our right to local self-government, given the ability of corporations to use their wealth and power to determine agricultural policy. Those corporate agricultural policies include laws and regulations which permit genetic engineering and genetic modification of life forms and organisms, and which allow the use of such life forms and organisms.
Take that. Finish that next paragraph.
According, the people of Benton County adopt this ordinance, which prohibits corporations from engaging in the planting, growing, cultivating, raising, harvesting, or processing of genetically engineered life forms or genetically modified organisms. To effectuate these prohibitions, the people of Benton County have determined that we must elevate our right to community self-government above the rights claimed by corporations. Otherwise, our right to local self-government shall be forever subordinated to governance by a corporate few, which is not a democracy.
Hooray!
All right.
That's the money shot.
So thank you to the readers for reading that. So you get a sense of the power of what we're trying to do in Benton County, and I'll just show you, if you flip the page to section 4, which is page 4, this is the Food Bill of Rights. So these are the rights that we're asserting to get to the stuff that you all read. And is it Jan?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the rights of nature, and that's, if you look at 4C, that's what we're doing. We're establishing the rights of nature so that rivers and streams and mountains and the like will have rights, and then that community members will have the legal standing to bring cases on behalf of those. Yeah. And then there are a number of other things in here: right to seed heritage, right to self-government, and the like. So that's really this epicenter of the ordinance is this Food Bill of Rights right here. And then if you turn the page to the prohibitions necessary to secure the Food Bill of Rights, so that's section 5 right at the top. So that just shows, that's just saying what you can't do in terms of violating this ordinance, so you can't plant GMOs and the like. And then the enforcement section at the bottom talks about how we would be enforcing these rights. And if you can turn to page 6 and look at E and F, if someone could take E and read that, that would be awesome. If not, I'll just go ahead. All right. Corporations engaged in activities prohibited by this ordinance or seeking to engage in activities that would violate the prohibitions of this ordinance shall not have the rights of persons nor access to legal protections afforded to persons by the United States and Oregon constitutions, nor shall those corporations be afforded rights under the 1st or 5th or 11th Amendments to the United States Constitution or corresponding sections of the Oregon Constitution, nor shall those corporations be afforded the protections of the Commerce or Contracts clauses within the United States Constitution or corresponding sections of the Oregon Constitution. Again, writing in the law to say that these things don't apply and corporations can't use these doctrines to knock out our ordinance. And then I'm just going to finish up here with F. Corporations engaged in activities prohibited by this ordinance or seeking to engage in activities that would violate the prohibitions of this ordinance shall not possess the authority or power to enforce federal or state preemptive law against the people of Benton County or to challenge or overturn this ordinance or any rules or regulations implemented to enforce this ordinance. When that enforcement or challenge interferes with the rights asserted by this ordinance or interferes with the authority of Benton County to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its residents. So, that's our ordinance. So now the question that always comes up is, well, this seems kind of cool, but is it actually going to do anything? Can it survive? And that's what I'm trying to figure out as a law student. But let me just give you a sense of where our efforts are at this point with this ordinance. So we really wanted to get it on the ballot for May 2013 this year. And we filed it back in October of 2012. And the week after we filed it, the county attorney said that he rejected it and said that it was a violation of a single subject rule here in Oregon. And I don't know if California has a single subject
do. That's why
for
we
initiatives.
cover other things than just the food. We couldn't cover cows and egg grain or anything.
Okay. Yeah, so we ran up against that right out of the box, and we then had to decide whether we were going to withdraw the ordinance or the other option was to sue the county, because we felt that we were actually under the single subject requirement. And
Yeah, it's rights for the ecosystem. Hello,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
subject.
yeah, so they couldn't see the one subject within it,
Obviously.
and we felt like we had a case, so we said, we'll see you in court. The problem with that was that then the ordinance languished until about December in the courts, and we realized that if we were going to get the signatures that we would need to get it on the May ballot, we would have to provide 3,000 signatures by mid-February. So it was going to be almost impossible to do, but we filed a motion for summary judgment, which is just technical jargon for make a decision already. And we filed that in mid-December, and then we didn't get a hearing until February 15th. So the idea of trying to get it on the ballot on May 2013 was done by then. And then to add insult to injury, the judge decided against us. And that was before that decision, the county attorney in his brief, in response to our brief, saying that we were suing them, said that we were domestic terrorists. He labeled us as domestic terrorists for the language that you all saw in here.
You're overturning the corporate system. This is a very scary document.
Yeah,
Yes,
it is.
yes. So we were up against that and had been labeled domestic terrorists, and then the judge just kind of followed suit and decided that our single subject effort in this ordinance was not there. So we kind of knew we were getting ourselves in hot water starting out. We are not giving up, and we are redrafting a little section of this in the rights piece to try and appease the judge. We think that if we submit it again, we can get it through with a couple of tweaks here and there. So our plan is to submit our new draft in the next couple of weeks, and then hopefully get it on the ballot for May 2014. And we'll see where that goes. Another interesting, yeah, sure.
So briefly, what was the basis of the terrorist thing?
Specifics? Yeah, the people are sovereign. All the stuff about self-governments and the people are sovereign. So there's
I know.
Okay, yeah. But the funny part about that is if you look at the Oregon Constitution, there's a section that says, you can dissolve the government if it's not serving the people. That's the whole point of the government, is to serve the people. And so there's language in the Constitution that we basically took and put it in here, and they were considering that, they were associating that language with the sovereign citizens movement. And so it was just a wild thing to see the language that we were putting in here, which is basically from the Oregon Constitution, being the hook that they hang their hat on to label us as domestic terrorists.
Well, the framers of the U.S. Constitution were domestic terrorists as well, so you're in good company.
Thanks. So the other interesting thing in terms of, so we started to expose the system by doing this effort, and a couple weeks ago we heard that the House of Representatives, there was a representative that decided to introduce a bill that would preempt any effort to regulate seed at the local level.
Yeah.
So basically they were scared about this, and then Jackson County, Oregon is also doing a GMO ban, not with the whole rights of nature stuff, but just a straight ban, kind of like I think Marin County and Trinity and Mendocino did years ago in California. And basically this bill would prevent local governments from enacting or enforcing any bill that relates to seed. And this is exactly what we're trying to do. So, yeah.
Did you see that yesterday the House of Representatives, the Senate voted, U.S. Senate, to label genetically modified salmon?
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yes.
So, to label?
So, you know what, if we can get through our little piece,
Wow.
there you have a precedent.
Yeah.
If that were to go through the House, we'd have a federal precedent for labeling. Once we have labeling, we have a tipping point.
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing. And so they must know. They must be marshaling every force they have.
Yeah.
From what you just said today, I realize it's going to be a pitched battle
Yeah.
to get the House to approve that amendment.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for sharing. I hadn't heard that. And so at the Oregon state level, we're still battling on labeling, and we're battling on this seed preemption bill now that is trying to stop our efforts here. So it can get frustrating sometimes running into these roadblocks, but we as a group feel that we're doing the right thing, and it feels like a really strong effort that we're trying to make. And we've had some successes, and the beauty of putting this forward, one, the community is talking about GMOs for maybe the first time. It's in the newspapers, it's on TV, on the radio. There are people, for me, maybe even more important now, also talking about democracy and who decides what is democracy. Because fundamentally, this is about who's making the decisions. And for us, we realize that GMOs are one issue, but we all care about a lot of other things. Pesticide use, healthcare, can go on and on. And at root, it's really about who's making the decisions on all of these issues. And so for us to see our community talking about democracy and talking about making decisions and who's making them and being civically engaged is really inspiring and fun to be around. There's also been some interesting bridges being built between different movements. So that we're coming from the food arena, but a lot of what we've been talking about with corporate rights is also related to the Move to Amend effort in communities, and there's been some nice synergy between Move to Amend movement in Corvallis and our effort in Corvallis to work potentially together or to put forward different ordinances that kind of relate to each other and can help move the ball forward. And then we've exposed some of the systems that's against us, which I've talked about. And then we have made connections throughout the state. So I think Glenn and Jeannie, or maybe just Glenn, were up at Food and Farm Rights Summit that we had a couple of weeks ago, where we brought farmers from across the state to talk about doing these types of ordinances and understanding what we're talking about when we talk about rights of nature and establishing a food bill of rights. So there's some movement at the state level and in different communities to take these on as well. And then maybe most important for me is just that there's this sense of hope and excitement about what we're doing in the community. And I've been talking to a lot of longtime activists who have been at this work for years and years. And I had someone just say, this is the most hopeful I've been in so many years. So I take that as we're doing something good here and we're getting people energized. And I, would be happy to try and connect folks to the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, to the Benton County Community Rights Coalition, if you are interested in learning more about doing an ordinance in your community. And so I'll leave it at that, and happy to take questions.
Yeah, your email and phone, or name and email?
Sure. So my name is Zach Baker. And then my email is Zachariah, so it's ZACHARIAH .Baker, BAKER, at gmail.com. And then if you want to learn more about the Benton County Community Rights Coalition, the website is Benton, BENTON, CCRC.org. So it's Benton Community Rights Coalition.org, but CCRC.org. Yeah, let's take the gentleman in the back.
Section 7E about application of constitutional aspects to corporation.
Yes.
Is that dependent on a successful move to amend?
7C or E? E. Is it dependent on a successful move to amend? No. This is built in here. This provision would stand on its own.
So is it, I guess what I'm saying is it possible to remove the constitutional right of a person with a local law?
Yes. We're saying we think we can.
Yeah.
It's obviously going to be challenged.
Yeah.
It's a good question, and unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately, the courts have not yet taken that question up. But the idea is that if you look down on that same page on section 9,
Yes.
there are Oregon constitutional changes, and so the theory of this is that even if we are challenged, at some point this stuff needs to bubble up to the state level, so then you get a state constitutional amendment, and then the theory is that if you get enough states to do it and be rabble-rousers, then maybe a national constitutional amendment happens. So maybe standing on its own, it doesn't solve the problem, but it's in a larger community effort, it will hopefully spark that type of level of change.
But a move to amend would make it easier.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned, so you say Lane County farmers. Can you talk about how broadly
Yeah.
you mean that?
Sure. So the Benton County farmers that I'm working with, Harry McCormick from Sumbo Farms. He's a very strong leader in the organic agriculture movement. Dana Allen, Rebel Farms. She's also a bread lady, so she bakes bread and sells it. Lindsay is part of Willow Seed Grains. Sorry, I think it's Willow Seed or Willow Grains, and then A2R Seeds. It's a slash name. And he actually comes from a conventional farming background and has gotten really excited about this stuff. Canola for him had changed his mind on some of this stuff, and so he's been pushing really hard on this stuff. So cross-section of types of production methods. Those three that I mentioned are the chief petitioners, so they're the ones that are on the hook for this in court battles and any legal issues that come up. And then we have a couple of organizer folks, someone from Alcee Falls who's organizing the rural community, and there are some concerned citizens such as myself who are also on the steering committee. And then because we've been tied up in the courts, we haven't really ramped up the outreach effort, and we're hoping that once we get this new ordinance in, we'll ramp up the outreach effort and get a lot more farmers on board and the like. If you're interested in kind of the cross-section of farmers that are interested in this stuff, Jackson County actually put together a sign-on letter of all sorts of sectors of the food business, farmers, restaurants, processors, and the list of farmers is like 4 pages long, and it's not just organic farmers, it's not just local farmers as well. It's a very fascinating list of people who are really interested in GMOs.
On my way back from Salem this week, right? Yeah, this week.
Yeah.
I rode home with a couple lawyers
Okay.
from New York. They moved here recently. One has passed the bar in Oregon and New York. Now she's working in Oregon. The other one just took the bar exam. And they want to start a nonprofit to support Oregon farmers against, these types of legal attacks. And I've got her business card if you want to get in touch with her. But they explained to me a remedy that hasn't been used in Oregon that may be useful when a farmer is harmed by a GMO farmer.
Okay.
And it's and I can't tell you a lot about it because I'm not a lawyer, but the best I can do to explain it has to do with a law that came about some years ago when, what would you call it, urban sprawl.
Yep.
As people started settling into farmland, they had to protect the farmers from nuisance cases.
Yes, it's the right to farm law.
Right, and
Yes.
so one of the clauses in that law has to do with farmer against farmer. If a farmer harms you, and you might know about this already, if a farmer harms you physically or economically, now people understand that the physical harm a little bit better, but there's this economic harm. So if you're if you're trying to save seed, or if you're growing vegetable seeds or what have you, and you're harmed economically because your seed isn't pure and you can't sell it, there might be a remedy there, but no one's ever tried using it. So I would like to see that tested, because I mean that's already existing law.
Yeah. So you explained that really well for not being a lawyer. So there's a provision in a right to farm law, which many states have right to farm laws, and as the gentleman said, that basically what was happening is for folks from the urban communities were moving out to farmland and then saying, oh, we didn't realize that there was a smell or, a noise or whatever, a tractor or whatever. And then they were bringing these lawsuits against the farms. And so states passed right to farm laws, which basically say you can't have a cause of action, except there is an exception here in Oregon that if it's an economic impact on a farmer to farmer, then you can bring a case. And as you said, it hasn't been tested that I know of. So it is a good idea to try and test it. A couple of thoughts that come to my mind is that one, that means that you have to be able to show that your crop was contaminated, and there's a lot of evidentiary issues with that. And then again, you're probably going to be fighting one by one farm by one farm by one farm, which is something that we've been frustrated with in just the larger battle on GMOs, which GMO crop comes in and keeps coming in. So from my perspective, I think if we can pass something that addresses that issue on a much larger level, then we get a little bit more bang for our buck. But that's not to say that we shouldn't be pursuing that avenue before we get that more global provision.
So the recognizing the ecosystem and practicing the preservation of that's been mentioned. I had heard that the country of India has actually drafted something in their constitution, the country's constitution, that says, everything that happens will take the sustainability and the health of the land into consideration, and they were successful in stopping Monsanto based on it being a violation of their constitution. I mean, that's kind of the biggest, if I'm understanding what I think I heard about that information.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're proposing on a small scale. Have your group really looked at, because if it can stand up in the courts of India, you think that it could help instead of, having to reinvent the mousetrap?
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with India's efforts on that, but I know rights of nature has been put in the Constitution in Ecuador, and I'm not sure that it's been challenged yet, but yes, it is something to look at. And I know the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, which is the group that we've been getting assistance from in our effort, was crucial in getting that provision in the Constitution in Ecuador. So there is a movement at the international level in other countries to put this into the Constitution, that you would give the rights of nature at the constitutional level, and that's certainly something we would ideally like to see. And the theory behind this is that it probably would be dead on arrival if we tried to do a national constitutional amendment on that. But if we can get local communities to start doing it, it hopefully bubbles up state level, national level at some point. And trying to learn from what other countries are doing is certainly an important piece of the puzzle.
I did read that just in the last couple of weeks. It was tested in Ecuador. There was a company that wanted to put a big road project in that was going to impact this river, and the local community fought it on the basis of this new national law, and the river actually became the plaintiff in the suit, and the river won. Yeah. I just read this in the news.
Thanks.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it might be wise, instead of waiting until you get this, at the signing stage for petitioning, to see if you can get it to go viral and see if you can win your battle in the court of public opinion before you even, before you go anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because that may be our only hope.
Yeah.
Like the thing with Safeway and Trader Joe's and Whole Foods refusing to sell genetically engineered fish. Oh, gee, all of a sudden now the Senate cares, right?
Yeah.
So that might be, I want a copy.
We could help
I'm going to email you for a digital copy,
Okay.
and
Sure.
then put it on the Green Grange listserv in California that
Great.
will reach a lot of people who care about these issues, and
Great.
hopefully from there it will
Awesome.
out
Thank
into
you.
the world.
Yeah, and there's also a copy on the Benton County Community Rights Coalition
Okay, so I can just pull it
website.
off the website, right?
Yeah, but you should also email me and I'll get you.
Yeah, so anybody can start a thread on GMO for USA, Diana Reeves has.
Uh-huh.
That can be put on there as a thread for all counties all over the United States. It sounds like there's too many pieces, it's too big a piece, to make it through, because if you can get one chunk of that through to make a precedent, then maybe that's the thing about putting the whole thing on there. What would we say about putting the whole thing on there? Because we don't want it just to get overturned. We like, what would we focus on that?
In one piece.
If we wanted to have one part of this, the rights of nature, I love that term. That's just fabulous. I never have heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it depends a lot on what the goal is with that one piece. So I say that because if it's about organizing your community on an issue, each community is different, and there may be different issues that get communities fired up. So it may be the corporate rights section for one community, it may be the rights of nature issue for another community. So it's hard to say blanket what's the best provision. I think the rights of nature is a very comprehensive provision that really does give you a lot of room to fight a lot of different things. So. I don't know that I would pull it out of here and just do a rights of nature provision, but
I can see rights of nature. I see food rights. Did you put rights of nature in here?
Yeah, so it's labeled rights of natural communities in section 4.
Oh. It's in there.
And then in thinking about just doing one provision, you also have to provide the shield for that provision. So when I say the shield, those are the provisions we were talking about that say that corporations can't use the existing doctrines to fight this.
Right,
and
that's
it
the
can't
problem.
be preempted. So you could, you can't just, you could put up a straight rights of nature effort on an initiative process, but the next step is probably you'll be in legal battles if it passes, because people will try and challenge it. And so you want to shield the one provision that you do with the statements that it can't be challenged and you can't use it.
So I'm concerned about this little preemptive term, domestic terrorists. Is that, as far as using that against you, is that like on a legal document that they've given you?
It's in their brief.
So we're talking about public opinion as well as legal. Is there?
Yeah, it's no. We haven't had a legal fallout from it. I'm not sure. I think. I don't know.
Just putting it in there.
Yeah, just putting it in there. I think it's definitely a big public opinion kind of thing, and it's also a statement to the judge who's looking at this and reading that brief to be like, "Ooh, this is something I got to be careful."
Yeah, it's prejudice.
Well, the judge might not necessarily see it that way. But it gives the judge a way to knock it down because it's so charged and firestorm kind of thing.
Is that a federal statute law what having the domestic terrorist issue, or is that an Oregon?
That's a federal. Yeah, my understanding is a federal.
And
Homeland Security.
Isn't it true that if they label you a domestic terrorist or a paper terrorist or whatever terrorist they have come up with these days, that you lose like your civil rights, your rights to trial by jury, and all these
like a
rights
threat.
that are guaranteed by the Constitution? Aren't they like just using it as a threat to make you just run away scared because you might lose your rights to trial?
I think there's definitely interest in making us run away scared. I don't know all the legal ramifications of being labeled a domestic terrorist. Probably look into that since we are.
This might be a good time.
But we're pushing forward and don't want to stop. So we feel like we're on the side of right there.
Just as an example, the people that painted the cars in an SUV lot, they were labeled domestic terrorists. So they're kind of throwing you in, with vandals. And I don't know if those particular people lost their right to trial. I don't remember what all the particulars were.
Yeah.
Listed 1 million people now as suspected domestic terrorists in the United States.
You become a drone target.
Yeah.
Zach, do you know about the 3 counties in California that they were working on non-rights-based ordinances banning GMOs? Do you know the outcome of that? Were they challenged?
So my understanding is they weren't challenged. I think they weren't challenged because people started to, they just kind of thought it was, oh, you know, it's Marin County and Mendocino County, and didn't take it, the corporations didn't take it seriously. I think at one point there was an effort to say, so after those passed, I think it was Marin, Mendocino, and Trinity County were the 3 counties in California that passed straight GMO bans. I think after that, the state government tried to do a preemptive effort and say you can no longer do these type of ordinances at the local level, which quashed the movement, if there was one, to do more of them. And you don't really hear about those happening in California anymore.
No, they did a preemptive thing, I'm pretty sure.
They did, yeah. So Maine, recently there was a county in Maine that did a GMO ban, and then San Juan County up in Washington State also did a GMO ban recently, and I think the San Juan County one is being challenged legally.
I think that's why this document would really resonate for people, because even counties that have not tried to institute a GMO ban, there's certainly people in those counties who are talking about it, thinking about it, wishing that they could, knowing that the state just will preempt it.
Right.
And that's why this language is pretty exciting, and I think it might catch the public imagination.
We hope so.
Yeah, that would be good. Or we'll all be, you know, rounded up and herded off into Guantanamo Bay or something else.
Any other questions I can answer?
Isn't there a David and Goliath type of case going on right now with the federal government? Is it
Bowman v.
Yeah.
Monsanto. Yeah, there's a case in the Supreme Court. And I'm not totally schooled on it, but the general gist of it is he's an Indiana farmer, Bowman, and he's suing Monsanto because it's an issue of patent law and whether you can use the seed after the patent expires. So you can't, right now you can't use the seed after you plant it. You can't save it and then reuse it. And he's saying, I think he's saying that he should be able to reuse it after he plants it because the patent ends at the point where he plants it. So then he can do whatever he wants with it
Well,
after.
because it's not seed anymore. Now
Yeah.
it's grown plant.
So I think that's the theory. I haven't read the case fully. That's Bowman v. Monsanto, and then there's also a pretty high-profile case going on at a lower level, not Supreme Court. It's I think in the district court in New York right now, called Ascada v. Monsanto, and Ascada stands for the Organic Seed Grower and Trade Alliance, and they're a group of farmers who are basically, to use the word preempt, they are filing a proactive lawsuit to say, to get the courts to say that Monsanto cannot sue them if GMO crops contaminate their farmland. And so it's unclear how that's going to turn out. A lower court judge dismissed the case, and then they appealed, and the New York court decided to actually grant the appeal, and they just had a oral argument about a month and a half or so ago, I think early February. So the opinion hasn't been issued from that. We'll see what happens. Those are the two big cases that I know about that are going on.
On the Supreme Court case, the judges were hostile to the farmer, and one of the justices actually said no more third generation, which it referred to the decision when they sterilized women who were low, they had third generation babies that were low intelligence or retarded. and the government took over and just sterilized those women, and he laughed. So in other words, this man had gotten seed that was in a silo that was where it had been contaminated. And he sprayed his crop, this farmer did, so that what was left was the GMO resistant to the herbicide, and collected that. So he, pretty knowingly did this. And so the farmers said, well, if you have this, then there's no point to having patents. Anyway, it doesn't sound like they're going to be at all friendly, but I hated that they used that involuntary sterilization of women as their justification for controlling this seed.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, it's really, for a woman, it's really cold.
Well, this has been a real treat for me. I really appreciate all the engagement. And if there's no more questions,
We need to go viral.
yeah.
Because having a room here that's not packed is a shame.
Well, all of us have networks, right? Everybody in here has some kind of email network.
Facebook.
Send it out. I'm terrible at this. But email is a great network. I know, I give it to somebody else.
Right. Well, thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.